sat for a moment at the emergence of systems of justification, and we've kind of got a little bit of a handle on what's up there together. Like now we're getting into this shared space, and we can kind of fast forward. So now we've got cultural evolution.
Right.
Step one, humans exit the role of apex predator and start playing a totally different game. Step two, they start playing that game against each other. We could focus on that if we like.
Right.
And maybe we'll
Game A.
Yeah, game A, exactly. Game A, that's right,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And then we enter into where we are now, right? Which is we're reaching the end of that phase, end of that stage.
Right.
So okay, so let's talk about that. So you talked about the digital. So let's do the same thing. Let's zoom into the tail end of the culture game, and then the emergence of the new thing.
Exactly. Okay. So let's ground ourselves about where we are so we can have a nice frame for what we can be talking about and what's very difficult to talk about given what we don't know is coming. Right.
Yeah.
So in the tree of knowledge says following matter, life, mind, and culture are such radically different planes of existence. Okay. Because what emerges is a coordinating system of information processing and communication networks that coordinate the flow of energy to give rise to more and more complex structure.
Yep.
Okay. So cells store information, RNA, DNA. They process that inside the lipid membrane and then communicate with each other. Okay. Then you jump up to animals, and nervous systems yoke cells together, coordinate the animal of the whole, and then animals communicate to each other. Okay. Then when we started jiving in our gestural symbolic way and then linked into propositions, we created the intersubjective language highway that yoked our subjective minds together to create the culture person plane. Okay. So the medium, to Marshall McLuhan, the medium's absolutely central, right? And ever since we started writing, so what we started to do with writing, we started to create an externalized memory of our symbolic language. Okay, so we externalized our memory, and then we stored that and created better and better systems so that other people could then process that when they learned how to read and develop printing presses. And then we developed computational systems on quantitative things like an abacus, and then turned that into a Babbage thinking machine, right? And then in the 20th century, we developed the silicon chip, we developed the internet, we developed artificial intelligence, and can yoke them together. What does that all mean? We have created a whole new information processing system and communication network, okay, out of material culture. So we built all these material cultural things, our technologies, but now we've created an independent, or at least interfacing, artificial intelligence network. So now there is information processing and communication taking place in just a radically different way. That's my term. Many people use the term digital. Okay, so the digital. So now that's why the tree of knowledge says very clearly we're going to be in a flux point. Okay, it's like what happened when we just discovered propositions. We have now just discovered digital and yoking digital and interfacing with digital and creating the whole digital interconnected internet. So we're on the cusp where we were at the fourth joint point. We're now on the cusp of the fifth, and we're now just opening up, like we use propositions. Now we're opening up digital interface spaces.
Okay, so something like we discover the intersubjective space, and we begin exploring how to do it good.
Yep.
And we notice that there's a number of basic boundary conditions.
Right.
One boundary condition is how much intersubjective space can you hold?
Yep.
If I'm limited to the boundaries of human memory, there's a certain limit to the amount of intersubjective space that can be generated.
Right.
Therefore, we begin the process of trying to cybernetically enhance memory. And we discover that if we externalize memory into physical reality, writing, then we have expanded that capacity and therefore can build much larger intersubjective spaces, which, as you say, also requires the creation of new particular skills and capacities like literacy, and probably cognitive structures for being able to do translations between languages, and being able to
Absolutely.
run higher level abstractions to verify the epistemology has to get stronger as you start having more ambiguity built into the symbolic structure that's trying to map the intersubjective space. We also have notions about velocity, like as you said, and distance. Right? If the only way for me to read the book is I've got to travel to Milan by wagon, that's, it slows down the ability for us to share the intersubjective space, which is basically at the end of the day a bandwidth issue. So if I can ramp up the bandwidth by virtue of being able to call somebody or talk with somebody, or if I can just do a video call over Zoom, the velocity of information exchange goes way up.
Yep.
So I can now, in the context of digital, we're reaching something along the lines of it feels like it's interesting to think about the quantitative qualitative shift at the quantitative level. So on this side of the transition, it's just like Moore's law, like okay, the thing we've been doing for 70,000 years, we're just doing more of it faster, lots and lots and lots. And so memory is expanding, like doubling every year. Remember that?
Yep.
And velocity is increasing, and the number of interactions that can happen is increasing, and the reification capacity to do the checksum at the epistemological level is increasing, in spite of the false news, fake news problem, which we're going to probably have to get to in this conversation. Then you've got this notion of a qualitative shift, and that's where things get real tricky.
Right.
That implies something which is not the same as person, and not the same as culture.
Nope.
All of person and all of culture live below the line. So whatever we're talking about on the other side of the line ain't person and it ain't culture.
Yep. And so you have a novel information processing system and the way a silicon chip processes information, right? And then we build. So now we used to have, rocks, hammers, build houses, but now we build things that actually process information, computers on their own, right? And then they get more and more learning mechanisms, and then they get more interface. We call that artificial intelligence, of course. And whether it's artificial intelligence on its own, like Ray Kurzweil thinks, or like I think, which is really going to be artificial intelligence interfacing with human intelligence. And as our human capacity increases and we neural link, as Elon Musk was talking, we build the information processing of our capacity to plug into the internet. Okay. The opening of that interface is like, we're like jellyfish right before they got brains. You got a distributed neural net, right? And then you get a control center system, and then boom, all of a sudden you can move the whole goddamn system. So we have distributed, and it's getting more and more centralized, and whatever that tipping point is going to be is going to launch us into the digital. And that's what we're staring at here at the 21st century. This is why the blue church is so inadequate, because it's built on radically different information processing, communication, sense-making systems that are now inadequate to manage what we've opened up.
Right. And I think we can actually begin the process of making fundamental statements of what adequate looks like.
Yes.
I think that's where things get interesting. We can actually start defining the parameter space. It's like, look, I don't know what's going to be on the other side of that line, but I know for sure it's going to have this set of parameters.
Exactly.
And I'm going to go ahead.
Okay. I was just talking with a philosophical friend, and we were talking about, well, we can't know what it is, but he used the analogy, well, we can midwife it. Okay. That is that we can put constraints on it, and then we can think about what is adequate to see coming down the pike and how to hold it in a way so that chaos and order and framings are structured.
Well, there's a simple one, right? I can give you one very simple parameter. If it kills everybody, then it's outside of the parameter space.
We can start there, right?
If it results in the extinction of all life, it's outside of the parameters.
It's certainly our parameter space.
But that's actually the point. There is actually, I think, let's drill deeper on that, because I think that there's something deeper there.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
When we were and exiting Eden is the hint, right? So there was we had a moment where we had this thing that was coming up that had, to use John's language, it was at the level of participatory knowing, right? Relevance realization, something that is grounded all the way down to 13 billion years of evolution, right? All the way down with continuity, right? No discontinuity. Then we have this leaving of Eden, which has a discontinuity. Right? We somehow exit that to come into propositional space, which is a different kind of thing. Right? Then, and the two are all, you're as you said, you're a primate, you're still a primate, and you're a person. Right? But there's a discontinuity between person and primate, and we try to keep them linked. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we engage in all kinds of crazy shit in person space that is absolutely out of alignment with our primate's nature, which generally makes us unhappy in the long term, but it might make us happy in the short term.
Sure.
Tell ourselves lies like crazy. So the proposition that that digital, that total, that set of digital that extinguishes all life is outside the parameter space is another way of saying that the discontinuity between the propositional and the participatory is outside the parameter space. That the digital must of necessity be connected, must be in continuity with the whole evolutionary story.
Exactly. So, and that's why I like to call it the digital metacultural transcendent. Okay. What I hope for, and what I mean by that is the constraints of the emerging digital, okay, need to be connected to the root from metacultural down into cultural, into mind, into life.
Yeah.
And, and the wise way, if we do it wisely, we open up heaven. And if we do it right, and that's the, and by the way, that's the whole metaphor from the tree of knowledge into the garden, okay, is a return to the garden, all right, that allows for, if we get it right, if we get it wisely done, we can align across and return to paradise.